My lords, my ladies, good afternoon. I'm the Princess Knight VTuber Ragnar Level 1, and what I have for you today is a tutorial on Battle Spirits, which is like the best Japanese trading card game that's around at the moment. I'm gonna keep things kind of quiet because I ruined my throat a little bit earlier, so hopefully it's not too much. We do have a lot to cover, so I suggest that instead of like trying to binge the video, like watch some of it, go and do something else, come back and refer to it. I'll have chapters when it goes up on YouTube. Unfortunately, the program that we have to use is VASSAL, which isn't really designed to play a card game with, but it's what there is until someone makes something better. So I'm just going to assume that you can figure out how to, 1, install VASSAL, and 2, install a mod and extensions. There's a link on the wiki. So just going to open this up. I have to use monitor capture because VASSAL opens like a million different windows, and so it will break if I try and use like application capture. Okay, so here we go. I'll just make that visible. There we go. Okay, so I guess let's start with, I think the best thing to start with is how the game is set up. So you start with, let's just go to deck box, set. So you start with 5 lives, 3 cores, and the soul core in your reserve, and you start by drawing 4 cards. Now the reason I want to start with this is because it's like the most important thing when you're building the deck, is that you want to think about, okay, what's my proportion of cards that like I can actually play if I draw them in my first hand. And also the minimum size for a deck is 40 cards, and you start by drawing 4 of them plus 1 in your draw step, so you see slightly more than 10% of the deck, which helps you start figuring out how probability and stuff is going to work. So let's start just by looking at some cards. So I'm going to... That's not really big enough to see, is it? Let's take something a bit newer, or maybe something in a bit more English, let's say. Let's go with this one's fine, probably. I'm going to drop you down there, and I'm just going to remove the library for a sec. Pull this up. Oh, it only goes in that far. Okay, this could be fun. That's really not big enough to look at, is it? I should have tested this a lot more before I started. Maybe, well, it is pretty tiny on my screen. If you're watching this at the full resolution, it's probably okay. Oh, hello. Oh. Okay, magnifier is apparently not the option to use here. Okay, how am I gonna do this? Can I... Lauren, if you're there, can you tell me if this is like actually readable when I've got it moused over? Or is that too small to be like readable? Okay, I guess we'll start as we mean to go on, and if it's too small, it's Midori's fault. So actually, if I'm going to do this, I may as well just bring it up in the library, right? Can I zoom in this at all? It's kind of annoying because I know for a fact that the actual icon files are like enormous, but okay. So the immediate thing you might think is like, wow, there's a lot of maybe this is the better, because I can, no, that only brings it after this size. Okay, so the immediate thing you might think is, oh shit, that's a lot of information. Don't worry about it, I'm going to break it down quickly. So at the core of the game, there's basically 3 kinds of cards, which are spirits, which are like creatures, Nexus, which I think the MTG term is a permanent. They like sit on the field and do stuff, but they aren't creatures. And Magic, which is magic. It does, you know, all kinds of things. So this critter, Melt Dragon, is a spirit. You can see over here it has a little spirit label. You can also tell if you look up here at the kind of icon that this has. So this like gold ring icon that you see up here is used for spirits. There are other gold ring icons that are used for like spirits that do certain things, but this is like the most basic of basics. So here's the art, which doesn't do anything. This is the name, which may do something. You can ignore the use of the at the start. The translations for this game are very, very bad. The original, there was an English localization effort way back when this game started coming out, and it was like aggressively shit. And it put the in front of like every card that had kanji in its name, and then it would like remove all the particles and just smush all the kanji together, so it's like really bad. And for some reason fan translators kept doing it. I'm hopeful that Battle Spirit Saga, which is a completely different game by the way, which is being made specifically for the Western market, I'm hopeful that it won't be that stupid, but I'm not currently like filled with great confidence about it. This little bit in the black bit here, this is, excuse me, I tried to breathe some water just before we started. Yeah, oh right, yeah. Lauren, you didn't answer me earlier. Is this like too small to be like viewable, or is it okay since like my preview is much smaller than the actual stream is? And like if I mouse over this, is this card big enough to read, or is it too small on the stream? Okay, I guess, actually, you know what I can do? Hold on, I can, expand, ooh, hold on, yeah, like that. I can expand the monitor capture so that the card is, like, much bigger. That should make it a bit easier. It means rip my, rip my captions, but, this is what we're doing now. Okay. So this bit on the black text here is the card's families. You can think of this as like a type in Yu-Gi-Oh! And a card can have a lot of families. Like this one has Primal Family and it has Clown Family. Primal is, by the way, a really bad translation for this family, but it's what's written there, so we'll use it. Then if we go down the left side, you'll see these 3 icons. So this is one of the most unique things about Battle Spirits. To keep a card on the field, you need to put cores on it. So if you remember, no, you can't see it because I moved. We put out those cores earlier. So you send cores to the trash to pay costs, which is what this big icon up here is. But you also have to put them on cards on the field to keep them on the field. So this card, for example, its level 1 cost has a little 1 next to it. So it has to have 1 core on it minimum, and if it has less cores than that, it's depleted and sent to the trash. Not destroyed, depleted. the same thing happens, but there's like a functional difference in the mechanics, so just keep that in mind. But if you, so at level 1, it has 3000 power, and it has this effect, right, which applies at level 1, 2, and 3, and when it's summoned, which is what's going on here. However, if you put 3 cores on it, then it would become level 2 and become 4000 power, and if you put 4 cores on it, in total, not additionally, then it would become level 3 and it would have 5000 power, and it's this effect that says level 3 and doesn't have level 1, level 2 next to it would become active. So even a monster that's a weenie can be powered up by putting cores on it. Generally speaking, the more expensive a card is to play, the cheaper its level costs are, but that's not always true. But for cheap cards, it's normally like 1, 3, and then the level 3 could be anywhere between like 4 and 6. But for really big cards, it's often like 1, 2, and 4, for example. So after that we have effects. These are fairly self-explanatory. The red text tells you what level they have to be at. So for example, if this card had only 3 cores on it, and it was your end step, then you wouldn't draw until you had 4 in your hand because it only applies at level 3. The black bolded text tells you when the effect goes off. So this one goes off when you summon the card, this one goes off in your end step, and then the text under that tells you what it does. It's it's mostly a reading comprehension thing. This little symbol here, this is for the soul core, which you can't see at the moment, but it's the red core with the metal border that you started with on the field. It's used for like, as a cost for like mutually exclusive once per turn mechanics. So that's like something you have to keep in mind at all times. So after that, there's 2 bits left of this. There's the symbol and the cost and cost reduction, which we'll go over. So the symbol is down here. This is used as the card's damage value. When it hits the opponent, you take lives equal to the number of symbols the attacking card has. So for example, a really powerful card might have like 2 symbols, or a card with like absurdly high BP, or a really good effect could even have no symbol at all, depending on like the design of the card. So that brings us to the card's cost and cost reduction, which is another like interesting part of the game. So its cost is this up here. So if you want to play the card, you have to pay 3 costs, right? So you would send core or in your field to the trash to pay the cost. But for each matching symbol already on your field that matches one of these icons, the cost is reduced by 1. So for example, if I already had 2 copies of this on the field, I would have 2 red symbols on the field. And since I have 2 red symbols up here on the cost reduction marker, the cost of the card would be reduced by 2 to 1. But if I had 3 red symbols on the field, the cost would still only be reduced by 2 because there's only 2 red cost reduction markers. So that's like spirits in an absolute nutshell. We'll talk about the battle phase specifically later. After that, so let's look at Nexus. Let me try and find a who do I have to kill to get a Nexus in my... Oh, because it's all Grand Walkers at this point. Here we go, okay. So Nexus use this hexagonal symbol. And their thing is that they sit on the field and do stuff. A lot of Nexus don't have a level 1 cost. So you can see here the level 1 cost is 0. So this can sit on the field with no cores on it. Excuse me. And it will continue to apply its symbol to your field. So like Nexus are mostly support cards. Like for this one, for example, this is for a deck that runs both red and purple cards. So its level 1 effect is that you can treat this symbol as also being purple for like playing purple cards, or like most of its cards, for example this one, have both red and purple reduction. However, in fact this itself has red and purple reduction, but like if you had this and you wanted to play another copy of it, you would still pay 2 costs, not really 1, because you can treat the symbol as being purple as well, but it's still only 1 symbol. So for example, if you had another red symbol and you had this card, and you wanted to play another copy of this card, then you could play it for 1, because the other card's red symbol would be used, and then this card's symbol is also a purple symbol, which matches the reduction here. So you kind of want to build up by using like lower cost cards first, so that the reduction of your higher cost cards is increased. This one, because this deck has like a high power line, like high cost line for its powerful cards, its level 2 effect makes you like way stronger. So like a Nexus can be defensive, it can be offensive. If you like playing with Nexus cards, then blue is the color for you. That's like the main thing that they do. And then the last major kind of card is Magic, which uses this double delta effect. It's like this. Magic can be played either during the main phase, like this one has a main effect, so it can only be played during the main phase. This one has a flash effect, so you can play it during your main phase in open game state, or it can be played during flash timing in the battle state, which I'll talk about when I get to talking about the battle step in general. So that's like the three main like super categories of card, and then there are a couple of other things that are a bit weird. So I gotta find one first. I want to like look for a brave that isn't awful. Here we go. So actually, if I could find one that's not a Saga Brave, that would be great. But I probably won't because I'm looking at Ultra Advent Saga. Yeah, here's a good example. This one will do. So this card is a Brave. Braves are very, very jank. They were made probably with a bit too much enthusiasm, not quite enough experience. So they have some very strange rules. You basically play them like spirits, but the gimmick of a Brave is that it can combine with a spirit that you control that meets its Brave condition. So, for example, this card can Brave with a card that is cost 3 or more. And if you... I'll just drag this up a little bit. You can see down here our the Melt Dragon that we were playing with earlier is actually the right cost, so this card could Brave with it. And when it's braved, the I'll go back up to here. So when it's braved, the card that it's braved to, like they share their costs, symbols, effects, and this bit here, which is labeled plus 3000, is how much power the Brave Spirit gets. When they're not combined together, so when they're not during Brave, which is when this applies, for example, then the Brave will sit on the field and acts like a spirit in every way and can be interacted with like a spirit. But at any other time, it's a Brave, which is a completely different kind of card and isn't affected by anything that specifies spirits. It's like incredibly jank. So because it's incredibly jank, they actually made a new category of card called an ultimate the next time they wanted to do a spirit-like card. So ultimates work like spirits, but there's a hard divide. While they do all the same things that spirits do, ultimates are considered a completely different category of card, and no effect that doesn't specify that it works on an ultimate works on an ultimate. So other things that separate them are that ultimates usually have ultimate symbols instead of color symbols. They start at level 3 instead of starting at level 1, although this is still their lowest level, so like if it ran out of cores to be level 3, it would get depleted. They usually have a summon condition that you have to meet before you can summon them, and they often have the ultimate trigger keyword. But otherwise, you know, they attack, they block, they stand on the field, they work like spirits, except for the fact that they're not, so if the card doesn't say ultimate, it doesn't work on them. Like, those are the two, like, subcategories of spirit. It's, yeah, those are a bit jankier than other cards where things are just riders. So now let's talk about bursts, I think is a good place to go next. Let's go down to Burning Legend, and then if we look in... Come on, where are I? Here we go, Honmaru. So you can see this Starburst kind of effect here. This is used on burst cards regardless of their type. Now you can only set one burst from your hand per turn, and you can only have one burst set at a time, but they work basically like trap cards. So when the burst condition here is met, which is kind of hard to read on this one, it's after your spirit is depleted or destroyed by the opponent, you turn the burst over and then you wait for anything to be resolved, and then you carry out the burst effect, which usually involves putting the card onto the field. Yeah, no, you can't. You can only set one burst per turn. Even if it triggers after being set during your turn, you can't set another one, I don't think. Pretty sure. Yeah, once per turn during the main step, you can set down a card with burst from your hand. You cannot set down a card with burst from the removed zone. You can set a burst with effects no matter what, but you can only set a burst manually once. Well, there's a lot. If I play like a burst-centric deck, a lot of those have like, when this burst, after this burst resolves, set a burst or whatever. I don't think we usually mess this up, but like maybe we do, I don't know. So in this case, after this happens and anything related to it would be resolved. So for example, if your spirit that was destroyed had a when destroyed effect, then like this would sit face up and wait until the when destroyed effect was resolved, and then if anything happened because of that effect, then that would get resolved, and then this would finally come to play and its effect would activate and it would automatically put itself on the field. Which is like a pretty key way of cheating out some pretty high cost cards. If you look over at for example, this card is cost 8, but it's a burst, and it has a very lenient burst condition, so you can pretty reliably cheat it onto the field really quickly. It also has a secondary condition that lets you like activate it without having to meet its condition. Some decks, like they re-released, they basically did like a remake of the main character's deck from Battle Spirits Heroes, which is really good, by the way. Like all the Battle Spirits anime except Zero are really good. And Double Drive and Sword Eyes are kind of just okay, but they're not bad. But like Heroes, Burning Soul, Deki Harden, Brave are really good. Heroes is really good. I think I said that already. And Toppa Bashin is surprisingly good, considering that at that point in the game's life cycle, it was a really bad MTG knockoff. But the anime is really good for some reason. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, right? Like Rush Tools are shit, but the anime is actually really good. So this deck is like all about burst cards and like setting extra bursts, getting bonuses when your bursts go off, and so on. So that brings us to Grand Walker Nexus, I think is the next place to go to. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard to read. So Grand Walker Nexuses are a bit special. As the name implies, they're kind of similar to Planeswalkers. Like they sit on the field and generate cores that are only able to be used on the Grand Walker Nexus. Like they get cores from the Void, and to use their stuff, they put cores back to the Void, and you normally can't move or put cores on them. So yeah, Planeswalkers, basically. So the way these work is that when you play them, first of all, they are Nexuses, but while they're on the field, they're not affected by anything that doesn't specify Grand Walkers, to stop you from doing like really silly things with them. So when you play one, if you don't have another one with the same name, then you discard your top 3 cards, and for each card that meets one of the conditions that is written here under its core charge, you would put a core to it from the Void. And the same occurs every time you summon or Advent a spirit or use the designated magic card. So for example, this one charges if it gets a spirit that has Supreme Hero or Great General Family and is cost 3 or more. But it will also trigger if you use a magic card that is a burst effect, like has a burst effect. This can be a bit complicated to wrap your head around at first because of the use of the slash and the but it starts to make sense before long. So these are like, you build entire decks around these basically. That's started to change recently with the addition of contract spirits, which are meant to make the game like a lot simpler. And they are pretty strong and easy to use. So yeah, Grandwalkers have like a regular Nexus, they usually have like a 0 level 1 cost. They have symbols, costs, core reductions. The main thing is that they have grand skills, which is a special keyword, which is for like activated abilities, and grand fields, which is a special keyword, but mostly for their passive effects. So for example, since this character is all about using bursts, his grand field has the effect where after you use a burst, you can set another one. So you can just like constantly keep bursts moving. So like if you are like starting to get into this, looking for a Grandwalker that you like and then building a deck around it is a really solid option. Or you can try like using a contact spirit or building around a specific family. I feel like deck building in this game is probably a bit closer to Yu-Gi-Oh than it is to MTG, but that's mostly my like impression since I'm not like really good at MTG at all. That leaves Mirages. So these are like new cards that are kind of weird. They use somewhere in here. Here we go. They use this like silver crosshatch pattern. So Mirages go face up in the burst zone, and you can actually swap them with a Mirage in your hand, but you can only manually set a Mirage once per turn, like a burst. And you can have a burst and a Mirage set at the same time. And you set them by using the Mirage cost. And like Mirage effects have a weird ruling where, if I recall correctly, let me just go here, just go Mirage. I'm just going to double check on the wiki. Yes, set Mirages are only specified by effects that specify Mirage, and however, they do still count as magic or spirit or whatever, so stuff like Icefall still works on them. Actually, Icefall won't because it's not using, but like Future Hero, which does have a negate ability, would work. Anyway, but Mirages can be like magic, they can be Nexuses, they can be spirits. What I'm playing in the background is the soundtrack from Battle Spirits Gekiharden, which is where I'd recommend that you start if you're interested in the anime. So, like, it's quite good. Jam Project did the opening theme, which is, like, amazingly sick and is one of the main reasons I'd heard of it before. Somehow they released, like, I'm probably going to get bopped on YouTube for this, but let me go back to... They somehow released this in the same year that they released Limit Break for Vanguard, and I'm like... How did you, like... Limit Break is, like, one of the few bad songs Jam Project has ever made. And it was, like, in the same year as this. Like, did you guys spend all your energy on this one? Okay. So we've now covered, like, all the, like, the basic stuff. So... next let's talk about how the game is actually played, and then we can go into some more difficult stuff later. So I am just gonna refit this to screen. Visible. Oh, well. Just get move you up a bit. Quickly load a deck up right here. This will do. Make sure you shuffle it because it does not start shuffled, which is actually useful in some instances. So you start by drawing these 4 cards. Is this still invisible or have I just gone? No, it is. Okay, I can actually afford to lose some more space then. Like to here-ish, yeah. So we drew these 4 cards. This is our starting hand. So at the start of the game, assuming that we're going first, we've already got our course set up. So it becomes our start step, our course step on the first turn, and we skip it. Wait, hold on, let me go back to the one we were actually listening to. We don't get a call. Normally you would get a call from the void to your reserve, but we don't this turn. Draw step, we draw a card, refresh step, and then it becomes our main step. Oh, this deck is actually, hold on, I messed up because whatever. So let's start by doing something simple. So this Fizard is cost 0, so we can play it literally for free, but it has a red symbol, so we'll play it, and we have to put a core on it. You can put as much core on it during this as part of the summon procedure as you like, so like I could level it up to 3 immediately. There's just like fairly little point in doing that. And then let's see, so like let's say I want to play this next, right? So because I'm building up, well, it's cost 3 and it has 2 red reduction symbols, and I already have a red symbol on my spirit, which is on the field. So I pay 1 cost, which I will pay for my field in this case, and this goes over here, which is where I like to put my nexuses. I put because my hands are over here, I put my spirits over here, and my nexuses, which I have to fill with less, over here. But you can do like whatever you like whatever's comfortable for you is fine. So we've now played this nexus, so its level 1 and 2 effect is active, and we're actually going to put another core on it so that we can use its opposing attack step effect, which will give us some extra defense. You can't really read it very well. Its level 2 effect is when your life is reduced by the opponent, you can destroy an opposing 5000 BP or less spirit, which is like red's main defensive gimmick, is that if you hurt them, they blow you up. And then just to demonstrate it, I'm going to actually set this Mirage. So even though this spirit costs 0, its Mirage set cost is 1. So I have to pay a cost, and then I reveal it, and I set it in my Mirage zone, which is over here on top of the burst. Now its Mirage effect is active, and then since this is turn 1, I don't get to attack, so it becomes my end step. So on the next turn, let's assume that I'll point first and they attacked, so we took a life rather than block. So the core that we take when we take life damage goes from our life to the reserve. So you have 5 cores here, you only lose when you run out. So taking damage early to generate resources, similar to Vanguard, is pretty normal. You might block depending on what's going on, but often you'll just take early in the game because this is like the fastest way to get cores if you aren't green. So let's say, you know, they attacked, we popped with this Nexus's effect. It's coming around to our turn. So start step, core step. We get a core from the void to our reserve, which is hidden behind the chat box. But I don't really have a good way of dealing with that at the moment. Because this is like a super ghetto way of doing it. Draw step, so we draw a card. Refresh step, so if we had any tapped spirits, which is called exhaust in this game, they would refresh, which is why it's called a refresh step. And all the cores in our trash go back into our reserve. So this works similar to lands in MTG, but it's a lot harder to like waste cores, because you can also use cores that are on your field that are being used to spell monsters and so on. So we drew a card, refresh step, main step, and we have 2 red symbols on the field. So, and this card costs 5, but it has 3 red reduction symbols. So its actual cost is only 3. So we're going to spend 3 cores and move it onto the field. And this card, Alex, is a burst. She goes off after your life is reduced. So we'll set this here. Now this is, you can see this thick yellow border around the card, or it's probably easy to see it around the Eisen Dragoon that's in my hand. That shows when the card is hidden to your opponent. So even though Alex is face up for us, if there was someone sitting over here, they wouldn't be able to see her. And similarly, if you mouse over stacked cards, it will blow them both up for you, which is really good because it didn't used to do that and it made Advent a pain in the ass. So let's say we move into our attack steps. So what happens here? First of all, it's the start of the attack step. Any effects that go off at the start of the attack step would happen now. So next, it's open game state, we choose a spirit or like anything valid to attack with. So let's say we attack with Eisen Dragoon. Now it has a when attacks effect, so its when attacks effect will go off. So, you know, it pops an opposing 7,000 BP or less spirit, and then since I don't have any incarnates, its follow-up doesn't happen. This is because I forgot that this was a contract deck. You would normally start with the contract spirit in hand, but I screwed up. But it's fine because I want to talk about that later anyway. So at this point, it's when attacks timing, and then the flash timing happens. So first of all, the defender gets the opportunity to play flash effects on their field. I don't have one in my hand to show you. I can probably find one if I... Oh, here we go. So this card, for example, has Flash, Contract, Advent, and your turn. So it can only be done in my turn and the go away. I forgot to disable my emails. That was kind of dumb of me. Fortunately, I'm sitting in front of them, so you can't really see them show up. So flash effects can be played during the flash timing, or without qualification, they can also be played in your main phase. This card can be played in the flash timing, but only in your turn. And its effect is Contract Advent, so by sending a Soul Core to the trash, you can stack this card onto a card that is either Flame Contract or Incarnate. Family, that's a family that's checking for. And it does check spirits, specifically. So that's something to keep in mind. So the defender gets a chance to play flash cards, and then the attacker gets a chance. And then if both players pass in a row, then the battle progresses. Otherwise, you will keep alternating whose turn it is to flash until both people pass in a row. So that's similar to like almost any other card game that allows interaction. But the important thing is that it means that unlike MTG, if you have stun cards, or I guess Yu-Gi-Oh as well, but not to the same extent, it's much harder to play permission control because the only time that you can play cards during your opponent's turn is either when a condition on a card that does something reactive is met, so that means like a burst, or a card that is like when X happens do Y as a passive effect, or it's your flash timing. That's it. Like, you don't get to interact with your opponent any other time than that during their turn. If they blocked, so let's say this was on their side of the field, if they blocked by tapping this, so if this card had a when blocked effect, it would happen here. And same with this one, if it has a when, like, if this card had an effect that happens when it is blocked, it would go off here. And then there's another flash timing rally. If that doesn't happen, then there's no second flash timing rally, and you just go straight to the showdown step. Which is, so for example, in this case, I can't manipulate the other side of the board very well because this is not a very well made plugin. Or, well, VASSAL isn't really designed to play trading card games. It's meant for like board games and like Warhammer and stuff like that, not tabletop games with randomized decks and stuff. So if they didn't block, then what would happen is the number of symbols on this card, so it's one red symbol, would be applied to their life. So for example, like if I got hit by this at the moment, I have 4 lives, so one of my life cores, because they have one symbol, would be sent to my reserve, and that would be, you know, my life was reduced, I took damage, yada yada. If they blocked, then in the showdown step, the BP of cards would be compared. So Eisendragon has 3,000 and Faizard has 1,000. So the card with less BP is destroyed and sent to the trash. And any cores on it would go to the reserve, like that. If both cards have the same BP, then they're both destroyed. Keep that in mind. A lot of red cards rely on being like, you know, if only the opposing spirit is destroyed by BP comparison, instead of, like, there's some jank cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! That will work if the opponent, if like both cards are destroyed, and it's really weird. Not very many, but they do exist. One interesting thing about this game, I think this might be how it works in MTG as well, and I'm not sure. So let's say they blocked, right? And then I did like literally anything in my flash timing and destroyed this card after it started to block. At this point, it doesn't actually matter that they no longer have a spirit on their field that's blocking, because they blocked at all, unless an effect says otherwise. They won't lose any life from this battle. So chump blocking is like really powerful in this game, but it can also be like quite expensive to maintain. And yeah, that's basically how you play the game. It's really that simple. The complexity comes in with the effects rather than like the core mechanics. So let's just clean this up real quick. Make sure you move the soul core off the board before you clean up, because if it gets shuffled in with the other cores, I recommend that you can make it like an empty deck file to load to clear the deck box as well. Bad things will happen. So let's talk about some more like specific effects that I want to go over, and then, believe it or not, we'll actually basically be done, which is good because my throat's starting to wear out. But the reason I wanted to do this was like, since I'm planning on doing more of the like connected battlers real-time translation thing, that involves playing the game, and I will probably do a lot of like unqualified table talking about like what's going on in games and in decks, so it'll be useful if people have something that they can refer back to. So the other things I wanted to talk about are Advent and Rebirth and Contract Spirits, because those are all pretty important at the moment. So Advent is basically a replacement for the old tribute keyword, which was really, really bad. Like incredibly bad. Tribute required that you like sacrifice a spirit of a certain kind, but also all the cores on it would go to the void, which is like terrible. So that was largely replaced by Advent, which instead works by sending your soul core to the trash. Normally you can't get the soul core back from that without some like really specific gimmicks. So it works as like a mutually exclusive once per turn cost. There's also some weird stuff you can do with the soul core, like it can't be sent to the void, so in some instances that can be used to mess with cards that would otherwise reduce your opponent, like cards your opponent is using that might reduce your core by sending it back to the void. You can like avoid it like that. Funny joke. So for example, Advent is always a flash effect, and it always has this condition which checks for a spirit unless it says otherwise, and then this tells you when you're allowed to do it. So this works in either of your either attack step during the flash timing. So for example, this needs cost 6 or more, which like surely there's one down here. Sure, so it's like this one. So if you have this on the field and then you're like, okay, I wasn't sure because I've only barely played MTG. And it was against someone who was like doing the Ori thing and trying to grind wins, so I did not have a good experience with it. It's like, yes, here I have this card which I play for like 4 mana and it sits on the field and it makes it so that all of your lands of the same color only provide 1 mana in total no matter how many lands you have, and it's like, what the fuck is this? I think I was in like 8th grade, to be fair. So I probably got cheated. So you would stack this on top of it, and then this card becomes during Advent state when it has like, it's what's called pre-Advent cards underneath it. So kind of like an Xyz monster in Yu-Gi-Oh! The card underneath it doesn't actually matter for anything apart from being material. For like this one, for example, can discard a pre-Advent card. Can I? Are you gonna get a bit bigger if I? Nope, you're just like that. Okay. Why don't I make this a bit bigger then? Nope. What did I just change? Oh yeah. Okay, that was a mistake. I can't actually like fiddle this any further from here without redoing the whole thing. So I'm just going to leave it there. So yeah, Advent is a way to like quickly get out powerful monsters, but you often have to build up to it. Like really powerful Advent cards often require you to have an expensive card to use as a basis for it. Does this have... I'm trying to remember what set the Blackworm that has the... maybe it's a revival card, actually. Yeah, this one is cost 6, but by sending a core from your life to trash, you can summon it as cost 3. But it's cost 6 on the field, so you can like summon this for cheap and then immediately Advent on it with something like this, which requires a cost 6 or more pre-Advent card, which is pretty slick. So then Rebirth cards is the other really big thing. Rebirths can be any kind of card, but they're normally spirits or magic. They have this rebirth condition, which is 3 or less counters, is this one. And if multiple rebirths would go off at once, then you can only pick one to happen. And so, for example, this one is when either the opposing life decreases or when this nexus would be removed from the field by your opponent. You can put your soul core onto the nexus from anywhere, by the way. That includes the trash. This is important. Don't mess this up. And you flip the card over and it becomes whatever's on the other side. So yeah, when you flip it to this side, this card remains on the field and you get a counter, put a core from the void to your counter area. Contracts work heavily with counters. In rebirth decks, counters limit the number of like rebirths you can feasibly do. But in counter decks, you want to build up like massive numbers of counters to fuel effects. Excuse me. Yeah, I tried to breathe water earlier. That was a bad idea, and it's kind of stuck in my throat a bit still. I got rid of like most of it already. Talking a lot has kind of aggravated it. So yeah, so like this one starts as a nexus, but then when it flips, it becomes a spirit, which is pretty cool. Something to keep in mind is that rebirth cards, their names are considered to be the name on the A side combined with the name from the B side, which is really funny because if you look at, where is it? No, it must be in True Rebirth. The SD59 version of Sordius Dragoon flips into Sordius Dragoon Koenig. And there's another one. Yeah. This is going to take me a minute to find everything because I don't have the... I don't think I remade that deck after the crash. And it might even be in Rebirth Saga. Yeah. Okay, the 53 version of Sordius Dragoon flips into Dragonic Arthur. Where is it? I know there's another version of... Sordius Dragoon somewhere. Maybe it's one of the True Rebirth extra starter decks. I know that's that one. I'm sure that there's a third one. Anyway, all three of these cards, because their B-side has a different name, they're considered differently named cards. So you can run 9 copies of Sordius Dragoon in your deck, provided that the B-side is only the same on 3 of each of them. I actually have a deck centered around this, the copies of Sordius Dragoon. Which is entirely for memes, but it's pretty funny. That's also useful if you look at I think they're back here in Ultra Advent. Yeah. It's gonna be in CV cards, which not here. It's like there's a lot of like Strike and Ale Strike cards, but for example we have Strike Gundam, and then back here in the structured deck we have Strike Gundam. This Strike Gundam is just named Strike Gundam, but this Strike Gundam is named Strike Gundam / Ale Strike Gundam, all as like one name, so they're treated as different cards. You can run both of them, no worries. And similarly, the fact that this flips into Ale Strike Gundam doesn't conflict with this card, which is Ale Strike Gundam / Launcher Strike Gundam. So like that's something useful to keep in mind. It also matters for Digimon cards, because a lot of the Digimon cards, that's right, they haven't released a Digimon set in a while because Digimon began its own card game. For example, we already had like a Togemon card released before. This one is named Togemon 2, and it's not just like a separation clause, it's actually named as a different card. So you could run like 3 of old Togemon and 3 of Togemon 2 and it would be fine. So like deck building stuff, keep that in mind. And the last like card type that I wanted to talk about is contracts, which are a bit interesting. So contract spirits have some special rules. You can only run 1 type of contract spirit in your deck. So for example, you can have 3 copies of Mugen, but you couldn't run like Mugen and Ian and Chocolat all in the same deck. That's against the rules. And you can, if you have a contract card in your deck, you can choose to have that contract card begin in your hand as one of the 4 starting cards that you draw. So the aim of this is to, like the stated aim here was to like really simplify the game for a little bit so that people could get into it more easily. So like contract cards all have a family like this, like Scarlet Flame, for example. And then this one has Scarlet Flame and Incarnate, and then all of the stuff that you would advent on it checks for Flame Contract or Incarnate, which this is. See, Incarnate. So the idea is that you would take the Contract Spirit and like level it up across the course of the game. Contract Spirits also work a bit differently to other spirits. When they would be removed from the field, you can instead have them remain on the field in Soul State, it's called. And in Soul State, they aren't considered a spirit, their symbol doesn't apply, they don't have BP or anything, they can't attack or block, and only their effects that are labeled as Soul State will work. It means like if you play this and it gets blown up, you can still contract Advent onto it with its first effect while this card is in Soul State. So like if you're like brand new, contract decks are a good place to start. SD64 is a contract starter deck, so you can begin there. Otherwise, they've started releasing, let's see, there's how many? Yeah, they released 1 contract for each color in BS60, and then BS61 gave us new ones for purple and green, and BS62 gave us new ones for red and blue. So BS63 should have a white and yellow one. Yeah. Maybe let's talk about making a deck really quickly. So if we load up the deck editor, I'm actually going to reset my monitor capture. So we have like this here, shows, I'm just going to minimize that once, there we go. So this handy dandy thing here is like a set for putting cards in. To delete everything, what I would do is do save deck when there's nothing there and just save as empty. And then what you can do when you're removing cards from a deck, while you can delete them by hand, what I often do is like move cards up there as I take them out, and then you just do right click load and then load the empty file that you made to delete them that way instead of like individually clicking on each one. So let's I don't want to like go all out and make like a brand new deck because that can take a while, but let's just build something really brain dead from contract main set red bear 60. So our contract spirit is going to be Glow, so I'll put him up here. Glow is Flame Contract and Scarlet Flame family, so that's what I want to focus on. Let's start by looking at the nexuses that we have access to. We're just going to look at BS 60 for now, so we're going to take this super easy. So this Mirage, anytime your counters increase by your Scarlet Flame family effect during your attack step, you draw a card. Really good, since Glow has the effect that when he attacks, you get counter +2 and you draw. So now you draw draw twice instead of once. And its Nexus effect increases your BP destruction effect, which is a big deal. So just for the sake of like making this deck like really easy, we'll put in 3 of those. Let's look at either a Stronghold of the Lava Sea. This one is immune if your opponent basically isn't playing a contract deck, if they have 4 or less counters. You get counter +1 when deployed, and in your draw step, you get to draw a card and discard a card. Or if you have enough counters, you just draw an extra card and don't discard a card. That's really good. We want to see that, and we want to see it as early as possible, so we'll put in 3 of it. We'll leave the magic out for the moment, because we're going to throw in some spirit. So let's start with the like super simple stuff. So first things first, we want to look and see if any of these cards easily tutor, and they don't. So that's fine. We don't really need one because we started with Glow. However, Glow does only cost 2, and his when attacks effect is really good. So let's start by putting in 2 more copies of him. Remember, we can have 3 copies of the same contract card. We just can't have like multiple contract cards. So then let's look at the low cost cards here. So Stagoro, the Mirage, and a Spirit. It makes you largely immune to white effects, which is a big deal because red otherwise gets kind of destroyed by white. And then this gives like a pretty good like stun effect when summoned. So let's put in 3 copies of you. This one basically gives you an extra symbol when you are summoning a Scarlet Flame card, which is almost every card in the deck. So let's run 3 of this. And it's level 2 and 3 effect also buffs Glow's draw effect. And Ryukin is a Glow specific support. Let's put in 3 of you. So now this is like our early game lineup, right? So now let's look at where we're going to go from here. Magna Liger is our first Flame Contract advent, so it's like the first card that we would evolve Glow into. We want to see this as early as possible because it will immediately provide a big power spike. And its overcount effect, which applies when you have the listed number of counters or more, is really good. So let's put in 4 of you to 3 of you. The limit is 3, like Yu-Gi-Oh! To make it easy to get. And Swalloge, this helps you like turbo your advent because it gets Soul Core back, but it's not that useful unto itself, so let's just put in 2 copies of you. Wyworld is the next step, and it's also got a really easy condition, so we're going to put in 3 of that to make drawing it more easily. So this way, if we get either Magna Liger or Wyvault, we're in a good place. Let's look at Mammoth. Mammoth. This fetches core back and gives you counters, and it destroys the opposing spirits and can't be prevented by white effects, which is really strong. The most common color that white can defend itself from with its armor effect is red, and so red can often just kind of lose to white. But it's also, this cost 5 and kind of expensive, so let's get 2 of those. You're not right. What do you do? Scarlet Flame. Yeah, this one's good. So this is after an opposing spirit when summoned or reborn effect resolves, and you get 2 big nukes, can't be prevented by opposing light effects. You cheat out this cost 7 card, which has this good when attacks effect. You don't... Getting this early would be a big deal, so we're going to put in 3 copies of it. Not you. This one can be summoned at no cost if you have 6 or more counters and you have glow, and is quite bulky, so we're going to put in 2 copies of you, which I'm going to put up there. And then we want to see Glow Kaiser, but not too early because he needs 6 or more counters. So we'll put in 2 copies of you now. Let's look at magic. So Count Draw is kind of the obvious choice. We do have a lot of draw power in this deck though, like almost every card in this deck draws cards, so I would actually be kind of unsure about this one. Oh yeah, this exists, I totally forgot. Oh, the Volcanic Flare is very powerful, and after you have 5 or more counters, its cost is half from 8 to 4. And it gives you tutor power, so we're going to run 3 copies of this. Yep. As I accidentally send it to the deck. And we have some Nexus Destruction effects, so I'm not worried about that. Advent Draw will let us draw our Advent cards more easily. So 1, 2, 3, and it's a burst. And then finally, we're going to put in 3 copies, of Revival Burst Wall from starter deck 56. This card is extremely good. You can play it from hand at no cost when you take life damage and apply its flash effect, which ends the attack step, so your opponent doesn't get to attack anymore. So yeah, we'll put Glow into the deck first, and then we can just box select the rest of these and go bang, save deck, Glow starter. And yeah, we've just made, like, this will be a perfectly competent Glow deck to start the game with. If you realize that you want to make changes, you can actually use the undo button to, like, get the deck back. The reason we put this one in first is because when you load up the deck, so if I go to my deck box, I say load deck, I load up Glow starter. If I then, like, draw the top card of the deck, it's... Sorry, send to field. You gotta send it to field first. Then the top card of the deck will be Glow, which makes it really easy to find. If you mess that up... No, that was wrong. If you mess that up, you can also search in the deck box for the card name that you want, and then it will put the card on top of the deck for you to click and drag, which is obviously useful if you're playing Contract. Yeah, that's like a very, like, quick overview and crash course. Go away. But, like, it's enough for you to start, like, understanding the game with. If you are interested, come by my Discord, which I link in the description on YouTube, and it's all over my, like, Twitch page and stuff. Midori and I run a role-playing server, which is, like, around card games and stuff. And Battle Spirits is one of the things that we do a game for, if you're into that kind of thing. It started kind of as a way to, like, learn the game while having fun doing it. So, because, like, we knew one person who knew how to play the game, and they, like, sort of taught us, and then we kind of had to, like, learn everything else ourselves. And so now I'm trying to teach, like, other people, because this game is really, really good. It's just, it had a terrible English release, and it's kind of hard to find. And yeah, the wiki is also a bit of a problem, but you cannot have everything. To be fair, one of the wiki admins is actually the person maintaining this plugin now, which is, like, good of them to do. It'd be nice if they didn't set auto-playing music that can't be easily turned off in the program as an Easter egg, because they like Witch from Mercury. But fortunately, it's not true. It's, like, super easy to just edit the plugin so that it stops doing that. Yeah. Okay. That's the end of, like, tutorializing and stuff. So if you were just here for that, like, you can click off now. If you, like, give a shit about what's going on about me and why I've been all over the place lately, We are trying to sell the house that my maternal grandparents lived in on Phillip Island, and that means that like people are having to make long trips back and forth, and you know, my schedule has slipped like really hard because there's like only like, you know, so much I can do, and I can't be like cooped up in my studio when I need to be keeping ear on the door for deliveries. And so yeah, things will be a bit of a scramble for the next couple of weeks, but hopefully it will finally fucking calm down after that. It's, yeah, it's been a real mess. But I'm like trying to do, like, my schedule says like 5 streams a week, and I'm trying to do like 3 at minimum, but I'd like to be streaming every day. It's just I don't always have the luxury of like the time or energy to do that, because depression is really fun. Anyway, I'm gonna sign off there, and I will see people either tomorrow if my throat stops being a shit, or the day after if it doesn't.